You're with India Post Live, India's first online news conversation web TV. I'm Ishan Russell, and yes, it's finally over. It's all done. The 2014 general election has finally come to a close. There is polling still going on in some booths in some localities, but yes, the intense campaign that we've seen over the past 1.5 months has finally come to an end. Now starts the real game. Now starts the real fun. For the next 3 days, there'll be a lot of exit polls that will be coming out, a lot of opinion polls, a lot of predictions, a lot of betting that will also happen on the sidelines as it happens with anything in India. But the exit polls now start. And as far as the exit polls are concerned, big question mark over them. There have been embroiled in some legality as well. But as far as the analysis and as far as the predictions go, well, they haven't been really on the mark. So let's take you through the story of the exit polls first.
In 2004, most exit polls flew off the mark. They overwhelmingly overestimated the victory of BJP and underestimated the gains of Congress and others, including the left. The Outlook MDRA gave 284 seats to BJP and its allies, Star C Voter 269, while NDTV Indian Express and Zee Talim gave 240 and 249 respectively. So how many seats did BJP and its allies score? 189. Outlook MDRA gave the Congress and its allies 164, Star C Voter 180, NDTV Indian Express 197, whereas it scored 222 seats. Others were given 94 to 110, but they won 132, including left parties, gaining an unprecedented 60 seats. Congress-led UPA-1 formed the government backed by the left from outside. In 2009, BJP and its allies got 159 seats, while Star News Nielsen predicted 197, Times Now 183, NDTV 177, CNN-IBN 175, and Headlines Today 180. Exit polls sharply underestimated the gains of Congress and its allies, which got 262 seats. Star News AC Nielsen gave 199, Times Now 198, CNN-IBN 195, Headlines Today 191 and NDTV 216. Others were given a high of 152 to 180 while they won 79, with the left parties dipping to 20 plus.
Alright, so on your TV, people are probably shouting at you right now, telling you what the results of their exit polls say, who's going to form the next government. What's the nature of the beast? What is the exit poll exactly? Let's first try to establish that, and let's see whether the methodology that often these channels follow, is it really correct or not, and why are they off the mark so often? Alright, so to help us understand that, we have with us from CSDS, a research associate Rahul Verma joining us in the studio, and Venkatesh Ramakrishnan of the Hindu and Frontline. He's an associate editor over there, joins us in the studio. Thanks very much, both of you, for coming in. And we'll also have on Skype Venkatesh Atreya. He's he's of course an adjunct professor at the ACJ, Asian College of Journalism in Chennai, and is also somebody who's really analyzed the elections of 2004, 2009, and will be giving us an understanding of, why an exit poll is necessary, and versus conventional wisdom versus conventional other forms of research as far as trying to predict what is going to happen. Also, we'll be joined by Mr. Darshan Desai. He's joining us from Ahmedabad. He's a senior journalist and has been traveling across the country trying to understand the Indian polity. That's quite wide subject, but yes, that is what he's been doing. So let's start with you, Venkatesh. What do you make of these exit polls, and what is an exit poll, just for the understanding of our viewers?
Well, exit poll is a poll that that the television channels, using various groups, various survey groups, they take people, they go to people and ask them to cast their vote in a ballot box they keep, or sometimes they ask them questions, who did you vote for, and they make a projection out of it. Of course, there have always been questions about the sample size, the methodology that they have involved, the kind of tabulation that they do. As a practicing political journalist for the last 30 years or so, I have found these mechanisms to be quite wanting.
When did they start? Did they start with the cable TV revolution, or did it come in much later?
Well, I don't know when the cable TV revolution started, but I think this is something a phenomenon which has got credence in the mid 90s. And I think Congress was perhaps the first political organization to kind of really understand this phenomenon or try to make use of this phenomenon. I think it started first time under the regime of Narasimha Rao in 1996, an election which Congress ultimately lost. So, of course, the exit polls apparently had predicted a return of the Rao regime at that point of time. It was essentially a inner party mechanism that Rao had devised, and I think later on our media channels also picked it up.
All right, Rahul, but as far as the methodology is concerned, I mean, you're working with an agency that conducts like nationwide surveys and polls. How different is an exit poll from an opinion poll, and how crucial is the sample size, and really, and do people really answer honestly at the end of the day?
So let me start with first thing. One, we are not an agency. It's a research organization started way back in 1960. Polls, opinion polls have its history in 1960, not only in India, but in United States when the behavioral revolution in political science came. Many social scientists thought that the best way to study political or sociological phenomena is to go out, ask people what they think about it, and then do research, right? CSDS did its first poll in 1965 Kerala Assembly elections. Then they did 67 election studies, 71 election studies, and after that, probably the intellectual giants at CSDS thought that they're not interested in polls anymore. They were writing state against democracy and all those things. And in 80s, Prannoy Roy, Ashok Lahiri, David Butler revived polling in India, right? They did in 1984 polls for TV Today, Ask at that time, and then they did 1989. And probably after 1995, 1996, when 24/7 news channels started coming up, then this phenomena of polls became very wide, right? Now let me differentiate between different kind of election polls. So there are like three major categories of poll. First is pre-poll, which is done before the elections, right? Then the second one is exit polls, which is done on the day of polling, right? Voters come out of the polling booth, you ask them questions, and then you make some forecast. And the third category is post polls, which you do after the last vote is cast and before the election results are announced. So different organizations use different way of doing these polls. To my mind, pre-polls and post-polls can have a more rigorous methodology compared to exit polls. The reason being, the investigator in exit polls do not have much choice in whom to interview, right? Because people are coming out of the polling booths, and one who's more vocal, probably male, a bit upper caste, upper class, they are more likely to speak out in exit polls. But in post polls, you can have a more rigorous method whom to interview. So generally what like CSDS does, or I believe other organizations also would be doing, is follow a very rigorous sampling methodology. Government of India makes most of its policy based on sample surveys, right? National Sample Survey Organization does some kind of surveys, and then they think what is happening to poverty level and other things.
Right.
So for example, like CSDS, what it does, it takes out like voter list, randomly selects 25 people in each voter list and approaches them for...
Out of 25, out of how many?
So generally in a polling station, you will have around 1,000 people, right? You randomly select 20 to 25 people depending upon what the spread and the size you want, and then you try to approach as many as possible.
All right, so basically you get a sense, and
Yeah,
that sense, Mr. Atreya, is quite off as far as what we've seen in 2004, 2009 is concerned. And I'll ask my producer to play those graphics out on your screen while Mr. Atreya answers. Can you hear me, sir?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Yes, I was asking, sir, how come then it goes so wrong? If there is a methodology that can be followed, in a sense can be gotten, then how come they get it wrong every time? That is what has been happening over the past two general elections.
No, there are huge problems, huge complexities, first of all. You see, literally speaking, an exit poll is a poll that you take as the voter comes out, exits from the polling station. Obviously, you don't do that because you have no... First of all, the interview situation is so problematic there. You come out of a polling booth, you have agents of different parties around. The whole mechanics of the high level of conflict situation is often on the ground. What you get really, it's not so much about sampling. I mean, as our friend from CSD has explained, you can make a very good sample design for a post-poll survey later on. But you have a huge amount of non-sampling errors that occurs in these situations. Because the person you're interviewing, the way you're posing the question, the way the person responds, these are not free of different kinds of biases and errors. So it's one thing to do a properly designed pre-poll opinion survey well before the elections or close to the elections in a situation where you take a list of voters and take a random sample therefrom, and then you ask them questions in an environment where they can actually truthfully answer you. Now, even there, it's not simple because in India, you have a lot of regional heterogeneity. In a given state, for example, you could have the concentration of support for a party in a particular region. So if you do a statewide sample, you miss out on that, on the specificities. At least pre-poll surveys can be reasonably done, but the problem with them is that going from vote share to seat share is extraordinarily difficult. Now, post-poll surveys, again, as our friend Hussein has explained, can be done in a proper, rigorous manner well after the poll is over, and you can talk to the voter in his or her residence, ideally, I would say, without any interfering or disturbing. So you need to create an interview situation where you actually have a good, truthful response from the respondent. It's possible, but it requires much more effort and time. Other hothouse kinds of polls where the marketing is the most important thing and you're looking for bites and so on, rigor goes out the window, at least in non-sampling terms. In sampling terms, scientists like us can say this is how you do sampling and all that. For any specified cost, one can always specify a sampling design that minimizes the standard errors of the estimates. Okay, this is the technical part of it. That's not the difficult part. The difficult part is the situation, the training of the pollster, of the enumerators who go out and do the survey, the framing of your questions, your survey instrument. These are very important. And I think, I would basically discuss exit polls hugely. Across the world, not just in India, across the world, exit polls have been very often bang off target. The reason often has to do with it has to do with sampling to some extent, but also has to do with the interview situations on the other. The non-sampling errors are far more important, as I keep saying. But post-poll surveys, as my colleague from CSG explained, can be done provided you're not in a rush to deliver your results. You choose your samples carefully. You will always, in a place like India, see, constituency-wise prediction is easier. Sometimes I wouldn't even dignify what these channels do as prediction. They're making guesses. There's a difference between guessing and making a prediction. A prediction relies on certain assumptions about probability distribution of the outcomes and so on. So, under certain contexts, in certain contexts, you could actually have a fairly rigorous post-poll survey, provided you're not rushed for time, provided you've done your preparation carefully, and provided the interviews take place in ideal situations. Of course, that's not going to happen because everybody is rushing to catch the audience interest, and you see
Right.
how terrible our electronic media is anyway. So, less said the better.
Right. So, in fact, I just want to remind all of viewers that as far as predictions go, you can go to our website, indiapostlive.com. There's a contest that we are running called the Hum Gole contest, and the first prize is a fabulous car. Yes, a sedan car is there for you to pick up. So, you can just go there, log in, post your comments, and just fill that form. Predict, and we'll be, of course, the one closest to the prediction wins the car. There are a host of other prizes as well, so go check that out on India Post Live. And if you're there, if you want to ask our experts a question, if you want to come in via Skype, you're most welcome to do so. You can use Twitter, you can use other social media tools like Facebook to get in touch with us. On Twitter, use hashtag India Post Live or hashtag Humbole or just at India Post Live. All right, Mr. Darshan Desai, I also want to get you in, but meanwhile, I'll just ask my producer to play out the graphics for the 2004 and 2009 exit polls conducted by various channels, and you'll see the discrepancy. You'll see the discrepancy that has been happening year after year in terms of election after a little before it, and it just made you question everything as far as the polls are concerned. But how easy is it to, I mean, or how often does it happen that the results are skewed to favor a particular candidate or a party? All right, we seem to have lost that link with Darshan Desai. Venkatesh, I'll put the same question to you. I mean, as far as the media goes, I mean, this is one election where a lot of question marks have been raised about whether the media is biased in favor of one candidate or the other. So, I mean, how easy or how difficult is it for an organization to maintain neutrality while conducting an exit poll?
No, personally, we have had exposés of these agencies, which not an organization like the CSDS, but the various agencies, the pollster agencies. We have had sting operations which have exposed them, which have shown that that these pollsters are ready to tweak their polling results in favor of one candidate or the other, one party or the other. There have been so many instances like that, and also the track record of these pollster agencies in the last two elections show there is a clear tilt, the political tilt of a particular agency that gets reflected in the ultimate poll projections that they make. So this is for everybody to see. So as a journalist, as I was telling you, I would rather not go with these exercises, but rely on my own sense of understanding of the politics and the local factors and things like that.
All right, Rahul, in a huge country like India, I mean, you have 542 constituencies, about 80 crore voters going to the votes this time. I mean, and we're talking about sample size that are really small in terms of an exit poll. The post-poll analysis that we were talking about is the post-poll opinion poll. How difficult is that, and how long would that take to conduct? Because that, as you're suggesting, perhaps is a more accurate understanding of a demography.
It's a very, very long exercise. So for our post-poll survey, we started preparing way back in October. We had first meeting in January. We translate the questionnaire in 18 languages, right? And it's not like we are going to all 543 phases tomorrow or we started yesterday, right? After each phase, we went to those places which were in our sample. And our investigators spent almost 4 to 5 days in those constituencies, in those polling stations, trying to get all those 25 numbers, right? So 25 people in that polling station that was allocated to them. So as far as I know about CSDS, we almost would poll around 22,000 people for our post poll. Now, whether 22,000 is a big number or not, that I can explain you in a minute. One, just by a way of example, right? The government of India, when it conducts National Sample Survey Organization, the big sample sizes are 1 lakh, right? And that happens every 2-3 years or 5 years, right? So they make government policies at 1 lakh, right? Whether how many people are poor, who should get what. So 22,000, 24,000 or 20,000, basically in India, to make a forecast on India, I think anything above 17,000, 18,000 is a big number. Now the number only doesn't matter. What matters is how much of your sample profile matches the census profile, right? Whether you have a proportionate number of women in your sample or not, whether you have, so basically are you taking care of the demographic diversity in India of your sample or not? And statistics and sample survey is basically based on a theory of randomization, right? If your sample is random enough, you are going to get a sample which is going to mirror the universe or the census profile. So no survey says that X is going to win in Kanpur or Y is going to win in Chandni Chowk, right? Because to make a constituency level prediction, you need a very large sample of say 1,000 or 1,500. But for a state like UP, if you have a sample of 2,200, 2,400, you have enough numbers to make a projection. So sample size, yes, it matters, but your sample should represent the population profile. And then comes other things like questionnaire designing and how you are asking your questions. We can discuss that later.
All right, we'll discuss that a bit on your screens right now. I'll just take you through the graphics that we are running. And this is what NDTV had predicted as far as the 2009 polls are concerned. They had predicted 250 seats to the NDA versus 205 to the Congress. And the result, well, it
UPA won government. Because the left had parted ways before the elections. There were a lot of give and take between the various allies. I mean, one did not know Bahujan Samaj Party, which was supporting the government for a long time, it had also withdrawn support. So there was all this political developments in the last 1 year before the elections, and there was a sense that there was a sense that the UPA is losing ground. But what people fail to kind of register, or what the pollsters and even the media failed to register, was the positive impact that the UPA had because of the a spate of measures it had taken, including legislation, path-breaking legislation like the Rural Employment Guarantee Scheme, the Forest Rights Act, the Right to Information.
That element of bias is what we're talking about. In fact, you can see on your screens right now, we're talking about what the Star News poll had said, and it had also predicted along pretty much what Z News had to say about 250 seats to the NDA Z News was giving. But the actual tally was completely different. The UPA was in with 262. So this is across the board. You can see that as far as 2009 was concerned, how the TV channels got it wrong. Mr. Atreya, just coming to the 2004 exit polls, they were completely in awe of the NDA at that point in time, if I remember correctly, and everybody seemed to think that Atal Bihari Vajpayee was going to get another term, but that certainly wasn't the case. So what happened then? What would you attribute the bias or the tilt towards the saffron band that we have over here on our screens?
I think one problem is that the media starts believing its own hype. That's a major problem with the electronic media as well as the print media, but particularly the electronic media, which are always looking for sensational news. The India shining rhetoric was being bought by these guys, even as the country was actually going through a relatively much slower phase of growth. There were serious No, the media completely missed it because the media basically doesn't make itself literate on these issues. I'm sorry. It is important to look at some of these fundamental structural factors. The other thing is what my friend from cities was mentioning, that you see you have different levels of aggregation. Okay, for a constituency with say 1,000 booths, you can always choose 20 booths and choose a certain number of voters and make a prediction for the constituency. That's one level. If you want to make a prediction for a state, like say a state like Tamil Nadu, it is very complicated, not just because it's a larger territory, but also because the political support varies distinctly across different regions. So for example, you may have the PMK up in the north, you may have the NDMK in the south, you may have the western corridor with somebody else. And if you do a simple random sample of say 5 constituencies, which happen to miss out on regional specificities, you could get it wrong. So getting things wrong is not a great sin. That's not my problem. The problem really is all about a conscious attempt to ignore certain political forces, certain, basically forces that represent underdogs in the country. For example, systematically over the last several elections, the Vajpayee NDA kind of thing has always been hyped up. This is a fact. You can go look at the numbers and see it for yourself. Similarly, mainstream parties get hyped up. Surprisingly, in one of the polls, the third front got more than it was supposed to get in the polls, but got less eventually. But otherwise, generally, what happens is non-Congress, non-Bajpa parties get much less of benefit from the major media. Very difficult to predict because of the enormous complexity, diversity. So we don't make it a sin to predict wrongly. But when you do it deliberately in a way. Or if not deliberately, by buying into your own bias. Unconsciously, perhaps. I mean, I grant them that. But seriously, when they come and tell you this is the most rigorous poll, we've got a famous statistician with us, we've got 5.4 lakh people, 5.4 lakhs, they bells out, bellows out on the television screen, and you're supposed to be impressed by that. I'm not, sorry. And this is seriously a problem methodology in our country. But polls are important. They can be done well. We should not throw the baby with the bathwater. We can design them in a better way, do them better. But exit polls, I'm not very fond of. Exit polls are inherently problematic. Post poll surveys are fine. Pre-poll surveys are fine. But the other major problem for you is from vote shares to seat shares. And nobody that I know in India has solved the problem of going from vote shares to seat shares. So there's some guesswork, some temporary formula, some iteration. Let's face it, let's be honest about it, let's admit it, because it depends on the index of opposition
So
unity, it depends on
you
the
basically, yeah.
lots of factors.
All right, so you basically make it up as you go. I mean, to suit your sensibilities, to suit the agenda. I mean, not the CSDS, but
it's
for
not
many
about
organizations.
I'm just not defending, I'm not here to defend CSDS. It's not about sensibility and soothing. So,
Yeah.
Venkatesh is right. Lots of polls probably are not following the rigorous methodology because conducting a post-poll survey is a costly affair. You would not believe it, but doing a good post-poll survey, one unit, one interview would cost you more than 250, 300, right? So it's a very
And then
costly.
there's still no guarantee that the person's been honest with
No, no,
you or
no.
not.
So there's no guarantee about anything, right? It's not about guarantee. A rigorous poll would try to ensure that you provide a best atmosphere where people can answer things, right? For CSDS, yes, we do estimate vote share, we do forecast on television, but our major goal is not that. Our major goal is to come out with research paper, write a book, and tell what is happening in Indian politics, right?
Right.
Seat forecast is over in 2 days. Some people would say, you got it wrong, you got it right, you're very good, you are very bad. That's just a tiny part of the game for us. For us, its larger part is to understand where the polity is moving. So I do agree that most organizations are getting the seat conversion wrong, right? So if you look at least for CSDS, I know in 2009, for most places our vote estimates were correct, but seat conversions, so we overestimated BJP and we under. Regional centric parties in Assam. AUDF will only contest, like, is going to be a player in only 3 or 4 seats, and they might convert those 2 seats, right? So, a good poll would try to have more spread so that they can capture those vote shares. And probably, I think in this poll, many organizations would have tried to refine their methods from last year's. And they can only ignore how they got it wrong at their own peril.
All right, so we'll have to wait till the 16th of May to figure that out. Hopefully, they've done their homework, they've done the effort to make their exit polls or post-poll analysis or whatever they're willing to do to putting it out there, trying to get your attention. But we want your attention because we think you can do a better poll, you can do better analysis, you can come in and talk about Indian politics better than any politician, better than any expert, because you're the expert. So come and talk to us in India Post Live. There's a hum bullet contest that's going on. You can win a car in that, you can win iPads in that. There are a whole host of prizes. So make your own prediction this time around and let's see what happens on the 16th. On that note, we'll wrap up. Venkatesh Athreya, thank you very much for coming in. Venkatesh Ramakrishna, and also thank you very much Rahul Verma for coming in. And we'll of course continue this special series on the Indian elections and the various aspects of it. So of course the exit polls have started right now. Let's see what the exit polls have to offer.